bases dropped on a Thursday morning, August 1st, the day after the MLS All-Star game. 3-0 win for Atletico Madrid. Not really a big shock there. There were lots of things to get into from last night. Orlando fans love their hot mics, that's for sure. And
Yep.
I was led to believe that there was no rivalry, and it just was just another game when Atlanta and Orlando face off. Go tell that guy who really doesn't like Brad Gazan. Go tell him that it's just another game. Lots of things to get into from last night. We'll get into all that. It's the Thursday Thoughts edition as well, so you can tweet at us and let us know what you're thinking at Soccer Down Here. Let's go ahead and get into it, John. I'm going to put the pressure on you. Let's kick us off with a good tweet to get the conversation rolling on a Thursday.
Okay. Will Palmer from last night. If this All-Star squad was an actual club, how do you think they'd do in league play? I'm sure they'd clean house in MLS, but what about Premier League or Bundesliga? I know you answered the question, but for those who have not seen the answer.
Yeah, I mean, of course they'd clean house in MLS because you're taking the best players and putting them on one team. So that part's understood. When you look at like the player values and transfer marked, for example, to try to compare, I have always felt like MLS players are undervalued there. So you take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it gives you a basis. They would be towards the bottom of the Premier League, and with being undervalued, and also if you're going to take this team into real competition, you're going to make it a little more balanced and maybe tweak a few things. I think they'd be a bottom half Premier League team. I think they'd be a mid-table Bundesliga or Spanish team, and I think they'd be a top half French team when you dig into it because of the talent that you can have available. I still think this should be an East versus West game, and I think when you break it out, and I posted what I felt like starting lineups could be for an East-West game, so much more entertaining that way. I mean, this is just such an awkward spot because you're throwing this team together and asking them to compete with a very good team. A team in Atletico Madrid that, yeah, they rotated their squad heavily. I think Diego Simeone used this as an opportunity to see a bunch of players in groups and see how they look. He brought his first choice guys on late, and the game definitely picked up, and that's where Atletico got to. But it's just a situation that Major League Soccer is not taking full advantage of. An all-star celebration can be a great marketing exercise for the league. This isn't. Because what's your storylines today? Well, MLS lost to Atletico Madrid 3-0. Oh, they're not that good. When they are that good. This is a very good team of players, and you put them together for a long period of time, they're going to be a very competitive team. But they had one training session, and they're not picked to be a competitive team. They're picked because they're superstars. So it's something that I think in terms of perception for the league hurts more than it helps at the moment. And that's a bad place to put yourself in. All the rest of it that goes around it, league meetings, all the different conversations, all the different media availabilities like the Players Association yesterday, all that stuff's great. And it's something that the league needs. You need those opportunities to conduct business. However, you could do better with the actual main event because this game creates these types of questions. You know, how would this team do in real competition? It's all hypotheticals. It's not a fair situation to put the team in, and it's something that the league just has to do better with down the road.
Caleb Cook in the majority. I'm tired of playing a team in Europe. MLS doesn't need the draw anymore. I'd love to see 36 players voted in to as captains. Then they get to draft their team or just do East versus West.
I'd be fine if they do the draft thing. I think I'd probably do East versus West for a little bit first and maybe get to the captain thing. The only other thing I would do if you can pull it off, and it would be a very different type of situation than we've ever seen, is the discussed talked about all-star game with a Liga MX all-star team against an MLS all-star team. Okay. That's a different conversation altogether. That's two all-star teams. That could be really, really interesting. But this format doesn't do anything for me. It's just not that interesting. It's just not something that you're going to learn a lot out of. I mean, I guess you're looking for in this one to see if Zlatan and Vela slap each other after all the conversation. You look for players to combine, and that's kind of cool when they pull things off. But beyond that, there's just not a lot to really dig into with the action on the field. I mean, your headlines coming out of this is a great goal from Atletico, a 3-0 win for them, and Orlando fans saying things on hot mics that they shouldn't be saying on hot mics. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. It needs to be better.
No.
You need to have more positive stories coming out of this.
And when the on-air product seemed flat in the 70th minute, and there wasn't any engagement, there wasn't any energy, you're just kind of sitting there going, okay, it's just there. And that's all you could really say, is that there was a 2-hour plus block of programming last night, thanks to Mother Nature. It was a little longer than 2 hours. And it was there. There were a boatload of programs on TV last night, and the MLS All-Star Game was one of them. And Finn Balor got spooked by fireworks on the live pregame show. Matt Schroeder.
He should be used to that, shouldn't he? I mean, pyro is kind of a thing in the WWE.
The first pyro spooked him, and then Rob Stone, Moedu, and Alexi Lawless tried to continue their interview around the continuation of the fireworks. And once they got adjusted to it, they were just making the point and hoping that Bray Wyatt was not going to show up. And Finn Balor did actually say that if the lights dimmed, he was out of there.
The cool thing was Finn Balor, I think, has a cousin or a friend who played with O'Connor, somebody in O'Connor's family. So there's a little bit of a connection there. That's cool. Yeah. Finn Balor is actually, I think, a huge Tottenham fan.
He is.
Big soccer fan. So very cool to see that. Look, you're going to see more of this crossover because WWE is going to be on Fox starting this fall with SmackDown. So you're going to see these types of crossovers. Fox loves to do this stuff. Okay. Let's have some fun with it.
Matt Schroeder with an economics question. Would love to know what, if anything, it costs MLS to have one of those European heavyweights as their all-star opponent. I agree that they're probably past that now.
Millions. I mean, I don't know what the appearance fee is, but it's a good chunk of money. I don't know what Atletico's appearance fee would be. It's probably not Barca, Real Madrid, Manchester United. It's probably a step below the. That's probably about the same as Juve. I mean, I don't think it's that different from Juve, to be honest. There's a cut above. I mean, Juve's not in the same conversation as Barcelona or Real Madrid. In terms of an appearance fee, it's not. And that's what we're talking about here. Let's be really clear about what we're saying at this point. It's not saying that Juve is not as good of a club as others in Europe or Atletico Madrid. No. It's talking about an appearance fee. It's talking about marketing dollars and a draw. So there's in an elite level that would be your Real Madrids, your Barças, your top English teams, and I would probably say it's Manchester United that has the biggest draw, even though they shouldn't at this point. They do. Manchester City, I think, is still developing that draw. I think Arsenal and Chelsea still do really well for themselves in appearance fees. I think Tottenham is increasing their appearance fees. Bayern, PSG, Juve, Atletico are probably in that next tier of draw. Bayern might be a little bit ahead of that group, to be honest. Bayern could be somewhere in between the two groups, but it's a lot of money. And what are you getting out of it? And I think the fact that, you put this one in Orlando City Stadium, Exploria Stadium, and 25,000 is what you're capped at there. I don't know if you're making money on the event. I mean, you've got some title sponsorship. You've got some things going on. I just don't know what the draw is here on this event. I think you can do better with an East versus West. I think you can make money because you're not paying an appearance fee, and that's going to make the event profitable. And I think it's going to be more entertaining, and it's going to be a better selling point for the league. I mean, I talked to so many people yesterday at 92.9 The Game who are, big sports fans and follow all-star games and what's going on. And it's something that in other sports, it's a bigger deal. It's just, this one doesn't register. It doesn't get your attention if you're outside of the bubble. So don't do it. Don't do it this way.
And as a part of that discussion, a lot of folks on the Twitters this morning were excited to see what the lineup looks like. Daniel Bramlett. I've only been hardcore MLS fan for 4 seasons, but into Euro soccer most of my life. Got to say, it's very cool seeing Zlatan, Rooney, Nani, and Vela all sharing the field. I might be too much of an MLS fan now, though, because I think Chara is world class.
Chara is excellent. I mean, Chara is just an excellent, excellent player, and we've seen his importance to the Portland Timbers. I think a player like Chara shows you where MLS can be in that conversation in this hemisphere, because you're going to get players like Chara who would be stars in leagues in South America. You can bring them here, and they need to be seen as bigger stars here. He's part of that Holding Midfielders Appreciation Society. He doesn't get appreciated enough. It needs to happen more, and we need to go beyond the players that come in as stars, and that's what we talk about as stars in this league. And you need to see more Diego Charas, more Diego Valeris, more Nacho Piattis, who come in not as well known and become stars. You also need to see your own developed domestic stars as well, like your Paxton Pomacalls. I thought Pomacall being part of this group and playing with that group was really cool to see. It's got to get that conversation here in the U.S. about these players has to progress beyond just the Zlatans, the Rooneys, the Nanis, the guys that you've seen play in Europe. Appreciate the Diego Charas too, and something that I was disappointed in last night with the crowd, and no, I don't really care that they were saying horrible things to Brad Kazan. Good for them. The lack of a reception for Nick Rimando, for Chris Wondolowski when they came in, especially Rimando. This is his last All-Star game. He is a legend in this league, an absolute legend in Major League Soccer. And it was just ho-hum, whatever. I don't even think people noticed.
No.
Maybe it needed to be done differently in the way that it was presented on the PA, but come on. That's an embarrassment, because these are the players who need to be celebrated. And when John Strong and Stuart Holden were talking about players who have built this league and mentioned Nick Rimando and DeMarcus Beasley retiring this year, they left out Chad Marshall, who had already retired earlier this season. He's another one. But players like that have to be celebrated in this league for it to progress beyond just talking about the Zlatans and the Rooneys. Those players have to be celebrated. And Rimando coming on and getting no reaction. Wondolowski, the leading goal scorer in this league's history, getting no reaction. Not cool. That stuff's got to change. It's got to get beyond just the superstar that you've seen in a Manchester United shirt. That's all we're going to talk about in this league. It's got to get beyond that.
Stu Holden last night said Rimando was the GOAT when it came to goalkeepers in this league. Where do you have Rimando?
I thought Gazan said that, actually. I think Brad might have said that when he did his impromptu interview with him on the bench, which was pretty cool.
Right. And then John asked Stu the same question.
Yeah. In longevity, for sure. In terms of a career in the league, yeah, there's no question. He's the best. And I think that's what you have to balance is, you look at a guy like Brad Friedel, who played in the league in the very beginning, in the early days, but only played for a year, maybe 2. So, no, Tim Howard, at the very beginning of his career and the very end of his career, he's probably the best American goalkeeper of all time. But in MLS, no, he didn't spend the bulk of his career here. We'll see how Abil Hamid is looked at in the long term, who has spent the bulk of his career here and has been amazing. Zach Steffen just spent a little bit of time. Brad Guzan spent the beginning and towards the end of his career here. Then he went to Europe. I think overall MLS career, Nick Rimando is the best. I think others that are in that conversation, Joe Cannon is in that conversation. Pat Onstad is in that conversation. Evan Bush is getting in that conversation with what he's doing in Montreal. John Bush is another one who had a very long established career in this league. But Joe Cannon and Pat Onstad are the other two that I would compare to Rimando, and Nick has had a better career than both, a better and longer career than both. So, yeah, I mean, your Rimandos, your Beckermans, your Chad Marshalls, your guys who have played 350-plus games in this league. Jeff Larentowicz is part of that conversation. Those are players that have to be honored and cherished and recognized for what they've brought to this league.
John Roper's All-Star Game takeaway was none of the Atletico Madrid goals were scored against Brad Guzan.
This is true. It was more of the second choice Atletico lineup as well, so you do have to factor that in. It's just, let's get into the TV stuff with Brad and with Walker Zimmerman. There was one really good sequence of it when they were actually both kind of talking to one another and to the announcers. That was kind of cool. I love the experimentation with it, and I think people getting bent out of shape. It's an all-star game. Come on, seriously, let's stop worrying about it. I don't care what people in Europe think about these guys with an IFB and a microphone on in an all-star game. I hope that the soccer snobs are going to let that one go and not try to trash everybody for it. But it didn't work as well as I think it would have. They would have liked it to a couple times. I think Brad's mic for sure was a little harder to pick up than Zimmerman's. But that one sequence was really good when they were kind of back and forth and talking a little bit about how they organized and this and that. It was good. I thought Zimmerman was really good on the mic. Even when he's yelling like, "Hey, you got me here. I'm open." Like playing and still having the conversation with the announcers. That's pretty cool. That's pretty impressive.
And think about the compartmentalization that you have to have a conversation with the guys in the booth and try to make sure that you're still doing what you're supposed to be doing in your job, running around on a pitch where the weather is nasty and it's raining on you. And, I mean, that's a great deal of compartmentalization by Walker Zimmerman and Brad Guzan.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's fun. And that's what an all-star game should be. That part's great. But do that in an East versus West game where you can really have fun with it. I mean, I don't know if you can make a smaller GoPro, but put a GoPro on somebody, have them running around. Do stuff that is like that in an all-star game that is East versus West, that is all about fun. The guys did as well as they could do with it. And full credit to them. And it made for one really good sequence on air that I thought was pretty cool.
GoPro might have to be on the official's head.
Well, you could do it on the official's head. I wouldn't put it on a player's head, obviously, but you could maybe, if you can do the little smaller camera attached to their jersey or something, have somebody do something like that. That's stuff you can do in an in-house all-star game that's about fun, and you can really experiment with it.
Let's see. You want to stick with all-star since we're on all-star, or do you just want to go back and forth?
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll see what we got. So keep tweeting at us. It's Thursday Thoughts. This can go really anywhere you want it to go. We do have a few things we want to get into. Conversation out of Orlando about the next collective bargaining agreement. Conversations about expansion. Things seem to have changed just a little bit. Lots of different nuggets from around the country as well, and all of your tweets on a Thursday Thoughts edition. So tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, August 1st, Thursday Thoughts edition. Let's get back into the Twitter timeline on the All-Star talk, and then we'll jump into the CBA and conversations around it.
Let me go with what Mike said last night in his All-Star recap, and we can bounce around this a little bit, in addition to everyone else who's contributed this morning. Mike in his All-Star recap says, Barker with 20 outstanding minutes, arguably the best MLS player of the night. LGP with 2 fantastic defensive plays. Gazan, and then parentheses, and David Beckham with a question mark, heckled relentlessly by an ultra in the front row. MLS got clean sheeted. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah, and that's Mike Conti, by the way, just in case you were wondering if it was Mike Jones or Mike Smith. Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game. Barco was really good. Looked sharp. We'll see if he's 90 minutes fit this weekend. Brad made a couple of nice saves. The heckling, yeah, we expected it. It's Orlando. Welcome to Orlando, and welcome to their hatred for Atlanta United players, and now Miami too. And Orlando's Twitter account was jumping in on that as well. Good, decent-sized group of Miami fans came up, and there was a really cool video of one of their songs from the concourse, and Orlando took some shots at them on Twitter as I guess they arrived and were doing their tailgate. Orlando tweeted, nice to see Fort Lauderdale showed up. And then they went back and forth a little bit, and Orlando said there were only 12 Miami fans there. I don't know why Orlando's Twitter account was trying so hard to start a brawl with Miami, but okay. So you see Orlando fans are not going to like Atlanta or Miami. So that'll be interesting to see how it evolves. LGP, yeah, he had a couple of really nice defensive plays on Diego Costa. They exchanged jerseys after the match. Kind of cool for Leandro in that regard. Pitti struggled. Pitti had a couple good moments. He had a couple really nice big switches of play. He was really poor in front of goal, and that's just going to continue to get people going. So have at it. I'm sure they're out there. I've seen some of the tweets. You got to put some of these away, and that gets people to stop talking, and when you don't, people keep talking. So no real shock there, but yeah, he missed a couple in front of goal that he's got to do better with. One really bad one. One was a little more speculative.
Let's see. We have talk about GAM and TAM and discussions about other things that are not related to the All-Star game. So if you want to go ahead.
Hold on. Ricky Ricardo has a good point. I did forget Miami's official response to Orlando when they tweeted about Fort Lauderdale. They called them #NoPlayoffsFC. Which is accurate. Yes, that would be accurate.
Yes.
Was that... I'm going to have to see. It wasn't Miami's official, sorry. It was the Siege Supporters Club, which is a supporters club for Inter Miami. So Orlando City SC on Twitter, the official team account, tweeted nice of Fort Lauderdale to show up. Miami supporters group said no playoffs FC has jokes. Still a little surprised that it's Orlando's official account that wants to go there, but I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. Let's get into the CBA. All kinds of talk about this. The Players Association spoke to the media yesterday, right as we were kind of finishing up, and just a couple of things from that. The league season is scheduled to start earlier in February, and that's kind of your thought process in terms of if there's going to be a work stoppage. I think everyone said all the right things about not wanting a work stoppage, and no one should. It's not going to help anything, I think, on either side if that happens. One big point of conversation was about the free agency requirements, which, not a surprise. This was something that was introduced in the last CBA. Figured that it would expand a little bit. I think the players gave up some other things they were campaigning for in the last CBA to get free agency on the books. And it was kind of restrictive, more restrictive than it should be. It's looking like it's going to be, instead of 28 years old and 8 years of MLS service before you can become a free agent, that it will be 25 years old and 5 years of service. That feels a little more appropriate. So if that's what it comes down to, cool. I think that makes sense. The players want to have the minimum salary raised. It needs to. The minimum for reserve roster players is $56,250 right now. For supplemental and senior roster, it's $72,500. I think the magic number is $100,000. That's what they're trying to get to six figures for a minimum. That should be doable. That should be possible because you're not talking about a whole lot of minimum salary players in the league. So this would be a very good headline to have that I don't think changes the bottom line in a massive, crazy way. It's not going to introduce a whole bunch of new spending. Charter flights is one that keeps coming up a lot, and it's something that they're going to have to figure out. Don Garber said, and this is a quote from The Athletic, it was a compilation piece from Orlando by Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejskal. Don Garber said, I get the charter issue, and it's been a discussion that we've had in both our current CBA and our future CBA. I'd love to be in a situation where our players can travel charter every game. I get the fact that we're going across multiple time zones and our country is very large, and that has an impact on our players. But it's all about how do we allocate our resources and where do we and our players prioritize our available spending, because it's not an unlimited pool of money. 100% true. I think some estimates have been that to charter every trip in a season, you're talking, I have seen anywhere from $2 to $4 million, and that's that's a designated player. So is that going to happen? One thing that I thought was interesting that came out yesterday was Leandro Gonzalez Perez mentioned this, because Leandro was one of the spokespeople for the Players Association, along with Brad Kazan, which was, I thought, really interesting to me that Leandro jumped into this. You haven't seen as many international players involved in the MLS Players Association. That's been a little bit of a point of contention with that. But LGP talked about flights and said that, they in Argentina flew domestic. But you're talking about flights that are, an hour and a half for the most part, not 5 hours, not these cross-country flights. And I think one of my things was, if you want to have a limit on charters, if you want to try to mandate, all right, we're going to help out the owners that don't want to spend as much on this, so we're not going to let everybody just charter everything. Flights for me over 3 hours should be exempt. That should be, if you want to charter it, you charter it. It doesn't count to anything, because those are the ones that I think it's the bigger issue on. A 2 hour flight, an hour and a half flight, It's a little more doable. I mean, I think some teams still probably could stand to do that because of the connection issue, because not everybody's in Atlanta, not everybody's in a hub, and where it's easy to catch flights at any kind of time to fly wherever you want to fly. They're going to have to figure this out and be logical about it, because I don't see a situation where everyone in the league charters on every trip, no questions asked. I don't think that happens. But it's got to happen more than it is happening, because there are too many issues with especially recovery. Going is one thing. Coming back and losing a day of recovery, losing a day of training, that's where I have the biggest issue.
Tafka has his wish list from the new CBA, and he says all of which he thinks is reasonable. 1, senior roster size increase from 20 to 23, supplemental and reserve with 1 additional spot.
When you get into supplemental and reserve, there was something that Doug tweeted just about. He talked to some players. This wasn't a statement from the Players Association. I want to be clear that they'd like to see just the different pots of money go away. You know, get rid of DPs, get rid of GAM, TAM, all that stuff, and just have a cap. If you do that, I think you get rid of reserve and supplemental spots too. Like, I'm not as worried about the breakdown of those individual spots. I think you've got to have more than 30 people available on the roster, and that's the bigger thing for me. However you want to divide it up, if you've got to have a X number of players above a minimum salary, I don't care. I think the reserve supplemental part, I'm not as worried about raising it 1, raising it 2. It's you got to have more than 30, period. That's the bigger piece, in my opinion.
Salary cap increased 50% from 4.25 to 6.5.
If you keep all the allocation money, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
A designated young DP and homegrown DP separate from the 3 DPs currently allowed.
Yeah, let's pretend you keep all the current designations in it then. I think having a dedicated young designated player spot that is additional, I'm cool with it. You can, if you opt to have 4 young designated players, fine. But you have 1 that is, if you opt to have a young designated player, cool. You can fill that spot first, and then you open up another designated player spot if you want. That's fine by me. I'm okay with that. That gives you a way to stretch. And what it does, and I think it's something about TAM that people just don't talk about enough. TAM made teams spend in a specific way. It didn't just say, okay, here's an increase in salary cap, or in this case, here's an increase in allocation money. Go do whichever you want with it. TAM made you spend it on certain types of players, which had a great impact on the league. I think it's one of the smarter things Major League Soccer's done in terms of making teams spend money better, and also making it something that expired, so teams had to use it. We talked about it going into last year's draft with Philadelphia and Chicago, and we said, well, Philadelphia's not going to spend TAM. They're not going to do it. They're not going to spend. They don't have the money to spend. Well, they're going to trade it and get David Accam, and now they flipped him and things have moved on. But you can still use it to benefit your team. TAM was a great addition in this current format of it. I'd love to see where you get to a point that you don't have to do that, and you can just let teams, build and fail to build on their own. But this was a way to increase the overall level of the league. TAM was good. A young designated player spot that would then open it up for teams to add another designated player, but focus them on everybody adding a young designated player. I like it.
Tafka wants the TAM and GAM rules maintained as they are.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's I see the player side. It's so much easier, and it would be easier for us to talk about all these different things if we just knew, like, hey, here's a salary cap, and here's what you're spending, and here's what you have under the cap. Cool. I would hope that if they do keep GAM and TAM, and if they do keep them as they are, I hope it is eventually truly publicized what teams have and what they're spending. So we can have a legitimate conversation going into the final week of the transfer window. This team has $50,000 under the cap, but they've got X amount of TAM, so they could do this with this type of player, or they've got some GAM, so they could stretch that $50,000 to sign a player for $250,000. You can have that conversation in the NBA with all of their crazy roster rules. You've got people who can break it down to, a few $1,000s. You don't have that in MLS, and it affects the conversation around the league. It would be so much better if we knew all of these things. In terms of GAM, TAM, I'm good with staying. If you got rid of GAM and you just put it into the cap, I'd be all right with that one.
Minimum of 7 charter flights with no restrictions on teams willing to do more than 7.
For me, I would make it a little different. I would say that flights over 3 hours are exempt. You can charter those if you want, and it doesn't count to your number. And if you wanted to keep the number at 4 or 5 legs for shorter flights, or 6 or whatever number you come up with, I'm okay with that. But flights 3 hours and over, that should be separate. And the league can sit there and say, these flights are exempt from charter rules. You may charter them if you wish, and do a list. That'd be fine. Those should be chartered if teams want to. You should have that ability to. Shorter flights should be more of a choice, but the longer flights, if teams want to do it, they should be able to do it. No questions asked.
And his 6th point is unrestricted free agency for any league player after 4 years.
I'd have to dig in to look at it and see 4, 5, whatever, if age, how it would affect it. 28 and 8 feels too much. 25 and 5 feels pretty good. I'd probably go with that first before I went to just unrestricted at 4. 4 years of service period, because then you could have 20-year-old free agents. Which isn't a bad thing. It's not horrible, but I get that the league wants to protect these situations. And, hey, if they're able to do that, it does give the teams a little more leverage. It's not the most awful of things from a business perspective. It's going to be something that the Players Association is going to have to figure out where they want to make these trade-offs. That's one that I think getting to 25 and 5 is probably the realistic move.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think we're caught up on all of the CBA. Oh, actually, sorry, one more CBA tweet from Eichmann. I just want to know cap space and money's available in whichever bucket.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I mean, when you can get to the level of NBA discussion, and that's a complicated structure. I mean, the NBA, so the salary cap was set at $109.14 million. You have a tax level. You've got exemptions. You've got bird rights. You've got so many things. I mean, I'm going to read you a paragraph.
Here we go.
Spotrac does a really good job of tracking this stuff. So I'm just going to read this. Teams that are under the cap will have their cap holds applied to their overall cap, while teams that are over the cap will not have their cap holds applied, but must use any exceptions they possess. If a team uses their biannual non-taxpayer mid-level, taxpayer mid-level exceptions, or sign and trade, they will be considered to be hard capped and must be kept below the luxury tax apron of $138,928,000. Huh?
Welcome to the NBA.
But I can sit here. All of that said, I can sit here and look at it, and it says, oh, Atlanta Hawks, 14 players signed. Average age of what they got signed, okay. Active cap, $103,533,000, okay. Dead cap, $100,000, all right. I get it. You got a contract on your cap that's dead money, cool. Total cap, all right, got it. Luxury tax space, got it down $28,597,845. Cap space. They've got $5.5 million to work with. I know what they can do. Cool. Easy. Gwen gets it. It's easy. Why can't we do that with Major League Soccer? Because it's not as complicated as this. It's a cap. It's roster spots and types of roster spots. It's how much GAM money do you have? How much TAM money do you have? So what spots do you have available? How much cap money do you have available? How much GAM do you have available? And how much TAM do you have available? That's what I need to know. And then we can have detailed conversations about what a team can do with a week left in the transfer window. And I hate when people ask, like, well, you know, Atlanta United, could they go sign this player? I don't know. You know, there's no way to know what they have. It would help the league. And the reason why I think it would help the league is, was anybody paying attention to the opening of free agency in the NBA this summer? Everybody was. It was the talk of the sports world. And it got beyond just the basics of, okay, well, where's Durant going to go? Where now, okay, now Oklahoma City's breaking up. Now where's Westbrook going to go? What are they going to do next? It got beyond that, and it got to the point that, okay, now you have the stars lined up. How much money do they have to work with? Who could they go get? Okay, who can the Lakers go get now? Who can the Clippers go get now? How much room do they have? What exceptions do they have? All that stuff. On mainstream conversation about these things, you were getting to that level. If you got down to like in NBA TV or podcasts or the Jump, they did a huge long special, like 4 or 5 hours on the opening of free agency. They're going a little deeper. We can't have that conversation at the level that we're talking MLS and transfer windows. We're guessing because nobody knows. We know what roster spots teams have. We know what international slots they have. We have no idea on cap, GAM, and TAM. I think it would benefit the league if we did. I think it would greatly benefit it because then we could have real conversations, and then you can start to look at Mario Balotelli's out of contract. Who could sign him in MLS? I can throw out team names right now, but I don't really know. I don't know who could bring him in outside of the international slot required. And that's a shame because that would be a great conversation to be having at the moment.
You mentioned the NBA. Same thing happens in the National Hockey League the first day of free agency. Same thing happens in the National Football League the first day of free agency. You have all of these leagues who make it an event almost where first day of free agency and then everyone is glued to their devices trying to figure out, okay, what can my team do? What can they have? Are they going to go ahead and do something? Are they going to pay the luxury tax? Are they going to go over the cap number? All these questions that are there in multiple sports here in the States. And MLS isn't right now at that same level of divulging numbers and cap space and all this kind of stuff. And I think it would benefit the league on a bunch of different fronts to have this kind of exposure, to have this push when it comes to free agency and what can be done and what can't, and transfer windows and all that kind of stuff. I think that you can turn it into that event that the other leagues have by doing the same kinds of things.
If you're going to have the cap and you're going to have these things, which I'm okay with. I know a lot of people aren't, and just people say that you should just open it up and spend whatever you want to spend. I don't see that happening, and I honestly see other leagues around the world figuring out ways to do a cap. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of teams that go out of business, flat out, or you're going to have more separation between the haves and the have-nots than you already do, which, in my opinion, ultimately hurts other leagues around the world. I truly think it will in the long run. I think you're going to see some kind of cap or luxury tax or whatever. So I don't think that's going away at MLS. If you're going to have it, we have to know how to talk about it and how to explain it and how to have this conversation about what teams can do. Because trade deadlines, transfer window deadlines, it always generates a lot of talk. generating talk about how teams are put together is a good thing. I think the NBA has the most complicated cap structure and all of that, just from what I know about it. I don't think baseball is quite as difficult. I don't think the NFL is as difficult. I don't know the NHL structure as well. But the NBA, with all of their exceptions, is where it gets complicated.
By design, the NHL's is pretty much a salary cap ceiling and a salary cap floor, and you're working toward a number. You can put folks on long-term injury and have that money go off of the books or take dead salaries and that kind of thing to help things out when it comes to years down the line. But it is not as complicated as the NBA. It's more NFL and Major League Baseball-ish kind of thing.
For me, if the NBA one can be broken down to where I can pull it up on a website and see that the Hawks have $5.5 million to spend under the cap, cool. I'm good. Then you can actually talk about, well, who could you get for that? It would help. It would be a good thing. I think it'd be very beneficial for Major League Soccer if you could do that. And that's why, even without the cap discussion of it, that's why NBC Sports is doing a huge transfer deadline day event from London. I think broadcasting from their London studios, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, from Sky, yeah.
And it's a long show. I mean, it's a big deal. I'd love to see that happen in MLS at some point. I mean, the Luciano Acosta drama in the last window was amazing. I mean, that was just absolute chaos that Luciano Acosta was, this close to go into PSG, and it all fell apart at the last minute.
I mean, how much fun was it to do on this show when we were having that discussion?
Well, and that wasn't even the MLS window closing. That was the European window closing where you had an MLS player involved. I'd love to have that for this upcoming window if there was just the conversation around it, that what are teams going to do when the window closes on August 7th? Who's going to be available? What trades could happen? I think it's going to get hectic. But it's really difficult to be able to truly inform you guys who are listening as to what teams can actually do. And it would help the league if they just made this more available. I think at a minimum right now, if you showed where teams are against the cap and you showed where teams are in terms of how much GAM do they have stocked and how much TAM do they have stocked, I think that'd be enough. I think you'd be okay if they did that.
Nathan Pugh, very libertarian of him here. I would prefer a full system of independent ownership without all the weird salary systems and free market of player movement to de-emphasize players' union, but that is, ironically, in a sports sense, anti-American.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. The independent ownership's not going to happen because MLS has shown the way for single entity and how it can be successful. And so you avoid the situations like Bolton's going through right now and what Bury's going through right now and what Portsmouth went through in the past. And you're not going to have that happen. As bad as Columbus was, you weren't going to have that happen to Columbus because of the single entity. So there's value in it. And I don't think MLS is where it is now. I don't know if it's still alive if you don't have single entity. So I think it serves a purpose. It has to open up more, and you need to get closer to an independent setup without being independent from a business perspective. I think you can do that. Things got to be more public, for sure. And you've got to let teams sink or swim a little bit more on their own. Those are steps that the league can take while still maintaining its current business structure that I don't think is ever going to go away.
Let's see, we have some Atlanta United stuff in the queue. We have Michael Head discussing the All-Star game and Percy discussing the All-Star game. And folks reminding us that it's not a rivalry.
It is a rivalry. Stop complaining, people. It's a rivalry. It is. I think that was a facetious reminding us it's a rivalry.
It was.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
It was.
It's a rivalry. It is. And we're going to find out more on Tuesday. We're going to take a break, but speaking of Tuesday, if you have not heard, we will be doing live pre- and post-game coverage on the Open Cup semifinal. We are unable to broadcast it on 92.9 The Game because ESPN Plus has all of the rights, including local radio, even though there's no radio broadcast, but they have all of that. You have to watch on ESPN Plus. We're going to do pre- and post-game live from the Brew House and have a viewing party, the Brew House Cafe in Little 5 Points. So would love it if you guys can come down and join us. The Brew House, if you have not heard, lots of stuff coming up over there in the next few weeks. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff with them going forward. They're under new ownership. They've upgraded all of their TVs. They're upgrading their menu with some really cool stuff. They've got a big Premier League kickoff weekend with trophies on hand from Manchester City. Manchester City has a bunch of their supporters groups from all over the country coming in. Sean Wright Phillips is going to be on hand. We're doing a live Soccer Over There show, not this Friday, next Friday, after the kickoff match of the Premier League season, with Liverpool playing at 3 o'clock. We'll do a Soccer Over There show in between, and Sean Wright Phillips will be joining us, along with a bunch of different supporters groups from other teams and Manchester City supporters groups from all over the Southeast and all over the country. So lots of cool stuff coming with us and the Brew House, but it's going to start on Tuesday with an Open Cup semifinal viewing party, live pre- and post-game coverage. You can listen if you can't join us on the app, on soccerdownhere.net, on Spreaker, but we'd love to see you guys. We're working on some giveaways and raffles as well. So we're going to take a break. Go ahead and write that down in your calendar while you have a little bit of time, and we'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Final segment, a quickie before we finish up hour number one. We'll get into MLS expansion and all kinds of other news and notes in hour number two, but we've got a couple tweets we can hit before the hour wraps up.
Yeah, it looks like Alex Shiva and Daniel Price are all asking about Chris McCann now that he and DC United have separated ways.
Yes.
Possibly helping in a return.
No. That's not happening. That is definitely not happening, according to Chris McCann's wife, which would be a good source because she tweeted, Instagrammed it, but it also went out on Twitter that they are returning back home. So she said, a month of huge change again as we shut the door on the last 2.5 years in the U.S. An amazing experience, especially our time in Atlanta. We've made friends and memories that will last a lifetime. So she is expecting, I believe, it this month as well. So I'll be curious to see. I'm wondering that was probably a big part of the mutual consent to terminate the rest of the contract that Chris had with DC United. I'm wondering if he's going to end up playing over in England. I think he's still probably got some time left in him. If that wasn't the case, yeah, I think he would be an obvious person you'd be looking at because he could help you out with a need right now. And I do think it's a need. I think it's something that I really hope George Bello is able to contribute and be in the lineup by the time the playoffs roll around. You just don't know. And you got to find a little bit of extra depth on the outside because I think it's really limiting in some of your structure as a team. And McCann would have helped that, but he will not be on this side of the pond.
Marshall Voigt with his Thursday thoughts using the hashtag. How about those last-minute trade deals the Braves made? Hashtag World Series. Hashtag everything will be all right.
Hey, everybody was freaking out. I'm still blown away sometimes. I don't watch the Braves closely, and I know their bullpen's been a problem, and I know that they made some moves here to help that, so that's a good thing. I get all that. Just judging from the Twitter comments I see in my stream and where the Braves actually are in the standings, they don't seem to go together. If I just paid attention through Twitter and didn't actually look at the standings from time to time, I'd think the Braves are under 500 and a disaster. So I don't understand it. Maybe the Braves Twitter is more freaked out than Atlanta United Twitter.
Yeah.
It's
I was going to say, did that remind you of another team?
Yeah, they're both weird. I mean, neither team's perfect, but neither team is bad either. So I don't know. It's very odd. But the Braves one has been striking to me as somebody who just doesn't pay real close attention. Man, anytime anything goes wrong, people are freaking out. I seriously, before I started looking at the standings from time to time, I seriously thought they were going to miss the playoffs this year. I thought, just judging from Twitter, there was no way they were going to make the playoffs. Mind-blowing. Lots of stuff for hour number 2. Maybe some mind-blowing things. We're going to talk about expansion. Charlotte seems to be moving up the ranks. We'll talk about some cities that were mentioned and some cities that weren't mentioned. And we'll get into some other moves that are happening around the league. A sponsor is supporting MLS Academies. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about some of the rumors with players. And yes, Christian Pavón and the LA Galaxy, I think, is still a thing, maybe, possibly, kind of. Maybe. I don't know.
Back on maybe?
It's been talked about again in a different way this time, and we'll fill you in. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire, and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm going to let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, August 1st. The All-Star Game is in the books. There's still some conversation coming out of Orlando. We'll catch up with our friend Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic next week. He is still in Orlando. Some big meetings with The Athletic today with all of their peeps in town. So Felipe is unavailable for Thursdays with Felipe, but we'll get him next week and get caught up on the trip. He did want to share with everybody that he played some futsal with Stuart Holden while he's in Orlando.
Did he nutmeg him?
He did not go into details, so I'm wondering if maybe he was nutmegged. So, don't know. We'll find out. But one of the things that The Athletic has been talking about, along with everybody else in soccer in the United States, is MLS expansion. We did not get any official announcements, any official, I think, concrete updates. Don Garber said that MLS is in, quote, very advanced discussions, unquote, with St. Louis. Not a shock. They made their presentation in front of the full board at the Board of Governors meeting. There was not a vote held, according to Garber. Several sources around the league said St. Louis is expected to be approved as the next expansion team. That would not be surprising. I think one of the things that was surprising was U.S. Soccer CEO Dan Flynn was part of the expansion group's presentation, and he is working in an unpaid consulting/advisory role. This is what a spokesperson for the St. Louis bid confirmed. Flynn has connections to St. Louis. He played for St. Louis University from 73 to 77. He is leaving U.S. Soccer, but he is still the CEO. I think Flynn, his official term that he used was, quote, helping the group with its bid. He said there was no agreement in place for him to be hired in an official capacity. I'm a little skeptical of that one. Maybe there's not an agreement on paper, but I don't know how much help he's going to provide if there isn't something at the end of it. And if he's leaving U.S. Soccer, it would make some sense. I think a lot of people have completely and utterly jumped the gun on this, and I think anytime people see U.S. Soccer and MLS in the same sentence, they think that it's corruption, it's collusion, it's whatever other word they want to use, and that's a little ridiculous. Not a great look while he is still CEO of U.S. Soccer to be doing this unpaid helping work that would appear to be in line with his next gig. But U.S. Soccer's got a lot of complications right now, and they have to figure out what their next CEO is going to be. If Jay Berhalter had a different last name, I would assume he'd probably been hired by now. But it's a little complicated when Jay Berhalter, who has been with the Federation for a long time and would have seemingly been next in line to be the CEO, when his brother's the national team manager. Because that creates some political turmoil, eh?
Yeah.
I don't know what direction they're going to go with it. And his involvement is going to be a little complicated. So Flynn still needs to do things with U.S. Soccer, but he's doing this helping work with St. Louis, and I don't know. There's got to be more people doing these things rather than one person doing 5 or 6 different things for different groups. Sacramento. Everybody thought Sacramento was next. It was St. Louis and Sacramento. That's what we'd be seeing. Well, Don Garber changed the relationship on MySpace. The relationship status is now complicated. It's not exclusive. We can definitely say that. And that was a word that was used. It had been talked about that it was St. Louis and Sacramento having exclusive talks for the 28th and 29th spots. Now they're not exclusive. That's opened a door for Charlotte. And
dating other people.
Well, maybe. We don't know if they're dating yet. They're talking to other people at least. And David Tepper has been very aggressive in wooing Major League Soccer. And they might jump Sacramento. I actually think they will. I think that MLS does not want to lose out on the opportunity to bring in Charlotte right now while the iron's hot. And David Tepper is running hot at the moment, talking about building a new stadium that would have a retractable roof that would sound a lot like Mercedes-Benz Stadium, would bring Final Fours back to North Carolina, would be a sporting palace for the Carolinas as a whole, with Charlotte right in the middle of both, and a lot of big talk from Tepper. And Tepper's got money to back it up. Now, he is seeking some public money for this giant sports palace. Don't know to what extent, don't know how that's going to look, don't know how that's going to break down. And those are some questions that legitimately need to be asked. But Tepper's also said that he would make Bank of America Stadium even better for soccer, and it's going to hold games in the International Champions Cup for the next 5 years. But there would be some renovations done at Bank of America Stadium if MLS happens, and that would be a spot that they could play at straight away. And he's been very bullish on what types of attendances they could draw. I think Charlotte is in a better place right now than Sacramento.
No doubt. And considering what they have drawn in the past, and when David Tepper is showing photographs of his family and youth soccer as a part of his presentation, you know, that's not lost on folks when it comes to the Major League Soccer office. And I think that right now, Charlotte's the hot commodity. They're the hot team. They're the keeper that's, you know, on the hot streak, standing on his head, winning all the matches right now. So I think that Sacramento's been quiet. Other cities have been quiet. Charlotte has not been quiet. I mean, you go to the Ally ad that was trotted out. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I would disagree that other cities have been quiet. I don't think – I think that's an incorrect way to put it, because there's a lot of cities who are jockeying for spots. I don't think they're going to have a problem filling these spots. And when you say that it's been quiet, that would give you that impression. I think Sacramento just doesn't quite have the juice to do it. And they might get there, but they're going to get passed again. Charlotte has jumped over everybody with this outside of St. Louis, who I think already has a foot in the door. You know, David Tepper coming in and buying the Carolina Panthers. He's had them for a year now. It's changed everything. And there's a great piece over at the Charlotte Agenda. Katie Peralta wrote it, posted yesterday. And one of the stories that she told in it was that the first time Tepper met with MLS officials, he showed off pictures of himself coaching his 3 kids, playing youth soccer. And that made an impression on Don Garber. And Tepper's passion and aggressiveness and bold statements is good. And it's definitely caught the league's attention. And something that I thought was really interesting, another city that has gotten quiet, is Detroit. And Detroit got hammered from people when they decided to go away from building a brand new 25,000-seat soccer stadium and retrofit Ford Field to be the home for MLS. People just hammered them and said that was a dumb idea and it was just a bad idea and it killed their bid. Well, selling point of Tepper's bid is Bank of America Stadium and eventually whatever sports palace he ends up building. That's changed the discussion a bit, and Garber said that it's put them on a different path than other bids. But that attitude towards it has changed. I do think Atlanta United has helped change that attitude. I'm surprised that Seattle didn't change that attitude in the past, because those are your top 2 teams in attendance, and they have the biggest option to fill, obviously, but they're doing great with their attendance. Other cities need to look at this option more often. If it makes sense, if it's a venue that can do it, if it's going to work, if you have control of the venue. You're going to see Soldier Field now. Now, you're not going to have control of that venue, but you're going to see Soldier Field instead of Bridgeview. That's another big venue. BC Place can be a big venue when you want to open it all the way, and you can do that if you want. I don't think those things are bad. I didn't like it when Detroit got hammered for thinking bigger. I'm glad that it's changed now to where Charlotte is not getting hammered for that. It's a different type of bid, but the potential is so much bigger for a bid like this.
the thing that has stuck in my brain, and I will put the first question that popped into my head, I'll put it off to the side for a second. If it benefits your market, why think small? That's the main point that has stuck with me really when it comes to expansion over the last couple of years. I know that Nashville is looking at a soccer-specific stadium, but their first couple of years will be at Nissan.
But they're talking about a 30,000-seat stadium, too.
Which is larger than Cincinnati.
Yeah. I mean, but that's I think 30 is where your minimum should be. If you're thinking small, you should think USL Championship.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you don't feel like you can draw 25,000 day in, day out at this point, and no, I know that's not the average attendance in the league, but that's what new teams should be coming in as a bare minimum, is 25,000 average. No problem to do that. If you can't, do USL Championship and grow it, and then maybe you can have the conversation later. If you can, think big.
Yeah. Just why restrict your thought pattern if the resources are available to you? And I mean that in the physical sense and in the economic sense. If you can put 39,000 into a place and not think twice about it, then if you've got that facility, great. If you need to build that facility like Tepper wants to do, more power to you. But then seeing all of this stuff, I'll go back to my initial question that popped into my head as a part of this discussion. What about something like Raleigh? Because of the success that we've seen with North Carolina Courage, because of North Carolina FC, because of the triangle and what they're building right now, they're looking at MLS as the next stage in their evolution, 919 to MLS. We've seen all that stuff. But Raleigh, for me, as solid as a soccer market as it is, but what do we think of Raleigh now with everyone who's coming to the table like a Charlotte who wants to trot out Tepper Palace and put people in there, knowing that the pedigree that Raleigh has these days?
Raleigh was already behind St. Louis, Sacramento, Phoenix, San Diego. If they got rejuvenated, they were already behind them. I think they would have been behind Detroit. I think they could have been behind Tampa. They're behind Charlotte. Charlotte's come in and leapfrogged so many because the conversation when this started about building a 20,000-seat stadium, I thought it was too small then. I don't think you can come in with that type of play anymore. I just don't see that. I think you have to start at 30. And it's something that if you're not at 30, you need to figure out a way to get to 30. 30's got to be your minimum. If you just can't with the venue that you have, and I'm not talking at the expansion teams, I'm talking across the league at this point, you need to find some ways to do like what San Jose is doing, where you have a couple big games a year in a bigger venue. It's got to be bigger, because if you keep putting a ceiling on it, you're going to put a ceiling on perception. And that's been one of the biggest things about Atlanta United and their growth is, one, they never treated it as a secondary team. It's always been treated by the organization on par with the Atlanta Falcons. That perception is carried over to local media. That perception is carried over to local sports fans, which, yes, you do have to attract fans outside of the soccer bubble. If you come in and you say that we're not going to play in the big stadium, we're going to build a 20,000-seater, you're already saying you're not as big. That's a problem. And I think it shows in some markets. It's something that needs to change. I think the league can look bigger. Now, you don't look bigger at the expense of financial security. You're not going to go rent a bigger stadium on the long term if you don't have to. If you can build a place that's 30 to 40,000 as opposed to renting Soldier Field, for example, you'd rather do that. But you'd rather be at Soldier Field than be out in Bridgeview doing nothing. But more importantly, Chicago has to be a better team. That's a whole different conversation. Yes. It's got to be treated as a bigger deal. And I think Charlotte is coming in and doing that and saying, no, we're going to be big. Like, all this is all the other stuff is great. 20,000 seater, 25,000 seater, all that's wonderful. It's very nice. It's very quaint, I think is what David Tepper would say. We're going to play in the big house, and we're going to draw big numbers, and we're going to do this in a big way. Y'all on board? And it sounds like MLS is. I think Charlotte happens, and I think it happens before Sacramento.
I agree. No, I think that Charlotte has done things very quickly. They've impressed very quickly. The plan is there, and I think that they're one of the next ones in line. I think it's St. Louis and Charlotte.
I think St. Louis and Charlotte are the two that come in 2022. I've wondered, and because of some of the ambiguity of all of this, if maybe you try to strike while the iron's hot with Charlotte because they could play at Bank of America. Like, I don't think St. Louis has a temporary venue lined up if they wanted to bring in somebody with Austin. They've left that door open without completely shutting it. They haven't really said that Austin will be coming in by themselves in 2021. I wonder if maybe they'd fast-track Charlotte. If maybe what would happen here is St. Louis and Sacramento come in 2022, and Charlotte comes in 21. I'd be intrigued by that. And then the question comes up again, well, you're at 30. What are you going to do past that?
People are still knocking on your door.
You've got Phoenix. You've got San Diego, maybe, possibly. You've got Raleigh. You've got maybe Detroit, possibly, again. Maybe they have a renewed interest. You've got Tampa Bay, maybe, possibly. And a lot of that's going to depend on what happens with the Rays in the long term. You're going to have things that are going to open up to you. I don't think you're going to want to shut the door forever on expansion at that stage. Now, it might be a different process. Things might be different, but I think you're still going to have interest in doing it. And if you're able to be getting, this type of money for expanding, I think they're going to look at it. But the obvious ones are the next three, and I think it's St. Louis, Charlotte, and Sacramento. Beyond that, Phoenix is the one that could push into that and make life difficult for Sacramento,
Vegas?
I think. Vegas has been talked about. Louisville has been talking to MLS. Louisville City is building an 11,000-plus seat stadium for USL Championship that can be expanded. I don't know if it can get up to that 30 type of number that we're talking about, but they've talked to MLS about Louisville. Vegas is aggressive now. What are they going to do? There's a lot. I mean, we can go through a list of cities. That's going to be, we've done that before. We can always do that anytime, and we know that they're there. I'm thinking more strategically at that stage. What does MLS want to do when it comes to the next evolution of the league? You could go to 32 and keep it as it is, and our boy Tafka will be working on his manifestos and opuses and how it can look and how the scheduling can look, and there's all possibilities. You can go to 32 and you can find ways to make it work where it's not going to change what MLS is yet. Going to have more cities, going to have more of a national map. It's going to help you with TV. All those things are good. But I think when you get past 32, then you're talking, okay, is this just going to keep growing and be two separate conferences? Is it going to be MLS 1 and MLS 2 and have a promotion relegation system between the two? Are you just going to absorb USL at that point? Are you going to try to buy USL, which is going to be costly because USL continues to grow? Lots of different things when you get to that stage. And MLS is going to get close to it after 2022 when they're planning to add teams 28 and 29. Team 30, I don't know what the timeline is. And that's why I wonder if maybe they come in with Austin.
Nothing like having a good problem to have, eh?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still something that's got to get handled. It's still something that, if you do it wrong, you're going to have some issues, but it's a good problem to have. It's growing pains in a good way to do it. So I want to see how they handle it, and I know we've got a few tweets on it. So we're going to take a break, gather up some Twitters, and we'll get into the MLS growth and expansion and what that can look like right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, August 1st, Thursday Thoughts edition. Getting into some deep thoughts about MLS growth with all of the conversation about expansion and the rise of Charlotte's bid. It's got some people thinking. What are they saying on the Twitters, John?
KFC has Thursday Thoughts. Western Conference, here come the Chicago Soldier Fielders.
I still don't think they need to change their name. I'm not... the name's not the problem. The product's been the problem.
Yes.
The location's been part of the problem, but the product has been the problem. The name, it's not that big of a deal. And yes, Google searches lead you to a dramatic television program. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't. I think people are looking for the Chicago Fire Soccer Club, have been able to find it. I don't think that's what's hurting attendance. I think bad soccer's been hurting the attendance. So Soldier Field will put them in a position where they will have a better opportunity to draw. It will also put more pressure on them to put a better product on the field, and that's what has to change more than anything. The name, you could really get it wrong. You could really get it wrong by changing it. I think that risk is bigger than finding some magical name that changes everything.
Vine City FC in this morning for the hashtag Thursday Thoughts. I've not been on the pro rel train before, but with the number of teams coming into the league, it might be time. Buy off some of the weaker clubs, bring in some stronger new ones, but keep the league a reasonable size.
That's another possibility. I think it's less likely once you figure out, okay. And this is the bigger question to me is, all right, the pathway to 30 is established pretty much. You could easily see that expand to a pathway to 32. All that's fine. Then what? And if you say that, all right, we're going to stay here for a while, we'll assess, but we're not going to look to grow any more from here right now. And if you say 5 years or whatever, then you're going to see some conversations around owners or investors who've wanted to get into the league, can't, and look at teams that are struggling and say, you know what, I'd like to buy that. And yes, I would like to buy that and move that. That's going to happen if you put that restrictor plate on. And that's not necessarily a bad move. I just think that's what's going to be the next step, is then you're going to look at, okay, who is struggling, what owners might want to sell at that point, and maybe not who's struggling. Maybe just what owners would want to sell at that point.
Yeah, who wants out to max out?
Yeah, because you're going to have that happen too, as you've had people buy into this league as an investment, and I think it's been a very good investment. But you look at the bottom, Chicago has brought in new ownership in recent years, and it seems like they're trying to push the club forward. Would Philadelphia be interested in selling? They could. I think there's potential for Philadelphia to be a bigger club than they are. I think they are limited by their ownership to a degree. But they've done a lot of really good things, especially on the academy side and developing players. Now can you find a way to make that profitable? Does that change who the club is? Or do they need a new owner with more investment? Joey Saputo's talked about losing money in Montreal, but he's had the Montreal Impact since 1993, so it's a little bit different conversation. But would he be thinking about maybe either bringing on additional investment or selling outright? Houston Dynamo, they've struggled to break through in Houston. Would they be one that would be looking for either new investment or selling it outright? FC Dallas, you're talking a little bit about a family legacy with the Hunts. I think that one's far less likely. Robert Kraft is seemingly investing a lot more right now in the Revolution. I mean, he's taking pictures with new signings these days. He remembered that he had the team, so that's good. I think when he started the season, hey, I'm cutting bigger checks now. I'm building a training facility. Maybe I should actually go check in on this thing.
I need to see what's going on with my money.
Hey, sometimes that's what it takes. And he jumps in a picture with Gustavo Bo, and things are looking pretty good for the Revs these days. Kroenke, I mean, I could see Kroenke does have ties to Colorado. He has other businesses there, other franchises there. But
he's vertically integrated.
Yeah, but could he sell off the Rapids? Maybe. It's probably a little less likely than a Houston, I think, but I guess it's possible. Columbus, new ownership. We'll see what they can do. I mean, that's going from 17 to 24 on the average attendance, not looking at franchise values. Red Bulls, there's been talk about them selling the stadium rights, or I think there was even talk at one point about them selling the stadium. Would they be interested in selling the team? I don't know. It does fit into their overall global soccer empire. And I think Tyler Adams is showing it has value. Jesse Marsh, being at Salzburg now, shows that it has value. Aaron Long's different because you didn't develop him from day one. You found an asset that nobody else could figure out how to develop because Seattle and Portland both had cracks at it. And then you took that and developed it, and you're going to make some money on it. It's a good move, it looks like. $4 million offer supposedly on the table from a French club, according to Brian Sciaretta. Okay, you're seeing some things there. But would they be interested in selling? I don't know. DC, they finally get their stadium. If they are not really tied into the overall long-term future of DC United, well, that would be the time to sell. Once you get your stadium done and you've increased the value of your franchise. I don't know who else really would be interested in selling. Maybe. I don't know Vancouver's ownership situation that well, to be honest, and I'd have to do some digging there. I think they're pretty well connected in Vancouver, so I think they have some pretty strong local ties. I don't know how interested they would be in selling that off. Like Minnesota, don't see it. San Jose, I don't see it. I think they've really put down some roots. Sporting Kansas City, don't see it. Real Salt Lake, don't see it.
RSL, don't see it.
Yeah, don't see it. NYC is another one like Red Bull. It's part of an overall global strategy. I would not expect it. I think if NYC cannot get a stadium done you're going to have to see some decisions made. Don Garber was very optimistic about the next big stadium announcement being New York City. It needs to be. It really, really needs to be. If it's not, that could change that franchise's trajectory for sure. LAFC, LA Galaxy, not going anywhere. Orlando has talked about it because you have an owner who is thinking about completely going into the philanthropic realm, and selling the team would be part of that. That's one to keep an eye on. I don't see them leaving Orlando, but selling the team, yeah, that's one that I could see because it's been floated out there. Toronto, Portland, Cincinnati, Seattle, Atlanta, I don't see it. So I don't know how many clubs would really be up for sale. I think there's some that would be up for investment, but maybe not up for complete sale.
Yeah. That's how I would interpret it right now, is that there are folks, you've seen in Orlando how folks are, how he's selling off portions, and the numbers that are attached to those portions are pretty big.
Well, but he's talked about selling. Like that's
yes.
Also a different conversation. Like, yes, selling portions can happen, but he's talked about selling it because he wants to completely go into the philanthropic area, and this would be something that would kickstart that. So, yeah, that's a different conversation. But selling pieces, we've seen Chicago sell pieces. We've seen others sell pieces. That could definitely happen with more clubs around the league.
Mr. Green lives and works in the Raleigh area, the 919 Falcoholic. And he thinks North Carolina FC's problem getting to MLS is the inability to fill their building, averaging 4,200 a game in a 10,000-seat stadium now. Soccer still feels secondary to college sports here.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think they are an outstanding USL Championship market, and that number needs to come up for USL Championship. To be perfectly honest, it has to. And I wonder if Charlotte's rise has maybe come at the expense a little bit of that momentum of growing it. I think they have a lot of good roots. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think building a new downtown stadium would be a great thing for them, whether they're USL Championship or MLS. I really hope all of that comes to fruition. It'd be great for the Courage as well. It'd be great for the whole club. I wonder, and I don't know the 919 as well as others, if being in Cary affects it, if being out where they are has some limitations attached to it, being downtown in Raleigh, if that would change it. I tend to think it would, just generally being downtown has been a good help for these clubs and these stadiums. I don't know if that is as true in Raleigh or not, and that would be an interesting thing to study.
Well, and I think that 15, 20 years ago, the thing to do for the sake of real estate was to find something out in the suburbs, whatever major market you were in. Now that has reversed, and you have franchises that are reinvesting, redeveloping, want to come back into downtown areas as a part of revitalization and centralizing your audience. And so I think it's the cyclical nature of business. And it just so happens that the business that we're talking about right now just is sports and sports franchises, where folks are gravitating back toward downtown areas now.
Yeah, I think it's across the board. It's central. Like Dallas, for example, being in Frisco, you've lost a lot of the Dallas metro area. You're just not going to do it. The Atlanta beat, I think to an extent, Atlanta United too struggles with that being in Kennesaw. You've cut off some of the metro area just because it's far. If you're in a central location, then you're going to be as likely to draw from Cobb as you are from Gwinnett, as you are from Fayette, as you are from Rockdale. It's going to be easier for a larger group if you're in a central part of the metro area, and the downtown is usually that. So I think Raleigh would do better being downtown, and then that's the next step. I think they were a long shot to begin with, but they could have had a Nashville-like rise if things came together on the stadium, and Steve Malik, who I think has done a great job with the club, was able to continue building the story. Charlotte has jumped them, and I don't see both happening.
Nathan Pugh, that dreaded pro-rel debate. And this kind of goes along with the theory that Mike Conti has floated at times. If 30 teams are in by 2022 and more cities want in, I don't see why a 1 and a 2 would be a bad idea. Have the two leagues operate separately, 23 through 25, and then in 26, ride in on World Cup wave and start the pro-rel process. I know that Mike Conti has said probably go to 40 and do an MLS East and an MLS West, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's another way to do it. I'm not quite as sold on that. I think in MLS 1 and 2, if it's all under the MLS banner and you're doing everything in the MLS way, could work. It can be fine. And I think it would work from a business perspective. It would work from a competitive standpoint. And it would bring pro-rel into it, but it wouldn't do it in the way that the tinfoil hat folks would want, which I don't care. I don't think that's what should be deciding it, because we're seeing it with NPSL Pro and teams thinking they could do it and then not being able to do it. We've seen it with, teams trying to put together and leagues trying to put together insurance and workers' comp, and then realizing like, hey, if we're going to really be pro, man, this is complicated. This isn't easy. Duh. That's the whole point. It's not simple to do. And pro-rel, in the sense of you could start a team tomorrow wherever you wanted, and if you're good enough, you could be in the first division. It doesn't work that way. And I think anybody who really follows the game knows that. The romanticism of it, wonderful. And it creates some great drama from time to time. It also creates some great heartbreak when teams get relegated and fail and go out of business and cease to exist. Or, like you're seeing with some teams right now, some heartbreak for players who aren't getting paid. Flat out. A team that was in the Premier League not that long ago is dealing with that in the Bolton Wanderers. Players hadn't been paid since last season. I think it was a few months last season they didn't get paid.
Yeah, Bury's worse.
Yeah, but not talking about Bury's never been in the Premier League. I'm talking about Bolton, who was in the top flight. And they're never going to be back in the top flight.
Nope.
It's not going to happen. That's part of the story. There's a rel part to pro-rel, and it's something that has to be talked about. But the pro part happens as well, where, look, it's just not that easy. You've got a league in the NISA that is going to have matches in less than a month. You're going to have matches in this competition in less than a month. And not every team has been announced in terms of who's managing it, what their name is.
Players.
Oh, players. That's a whole separate thing. I mean, it's just unbelievable that that's where you're at. This is a professional league that is not looking very professional. It's not easy to do this. It does take a lot of investment because, as we've talked about many times and as we've talked about in the last hour, when you don't have that investment, it's not coming off in a very professional way. And what does that do? That affects how much money you can bring in. That affects what type of crowds you can draw. That affects all these things. I think sometimes it's very easy for us in the soccer world to only think about this world and this bubble that we're in. And it's even easier when you're in a smaller bubble. But to be at the world where Atlanta United is, where Seattle Sounders are, where LAFC is, where big clubs are, which is what drives the game. Right or wrong, it's what drives the game. You have to have the grassroots as well, and the grassroots has to be supported, but it's grassroots for a reason. The big stories are what drives the game. It's what people talk about. It's changed from the days in England where you only watched your local team because you couldn't see Manchester United or Manchester City or Chelsea or Arsenal because you couldn't get there and they weren't on TV, and you had your support of your local team because that's what you did. Well, now you got games on TV. Now you can make the decision, you know what, I don't want to go watch this bad team that's in my hometown because it's bad soccer. I'm going to watch Barcelona and Real Madrid on TV instead. And it's the same here with all of our sports. You put a bad product on the field, people are not obligated to show up. That obligation is not in existence anymore. TV's changed it. News has changed it. The world's a smaller place. If you're in Chicago right now and you're putting a bad product on the field year after year after year after year, you've got soccer fans, hardcore soccer fans, who are like, you know what, I'm not going to spend my money on this ticket. I'm going to spend this money on a Fanati subscription, and I'm going to stay home and I'm going to watch the Argentine Superliga. Because I'm going to get more enjoyment out of that than watching my local team play badly year after year after year. There is an obligation to put a high-quality product out. To do a high-quality product, you have to have the appropriate resources to do it. You can't be high-quality and not... You can't be high-quality in name only. And I think sometimes we try to sell it that way. And ProRel gets into that conversation too much. ProRel, in a pure sense, would allow teams who are high-quality and have the resources to do it to earn their way up. That would be great. It's not as mature in the United States to have that happen just yet. Because how many times in the last 10 years have we seen lower division teams put a good team on the field but go out of business? Or just not be able to progress past that. San Francisco Deltas are the prime example.
Mm-hmm.
Year one, they put a championship team together. They win the championship. Not even halfway through year one, they're like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. We're going to cease to exist at the end of the season. Like, really? And that was the second division team. Really? It's not as easy as you think. I think having ProRel at appropriate levels in American soccer should happen. USL Championship and USL League One, when League One is fully mature, would love to see it, and that would solve your conundrum about MLS second teams playing in USL Championship or USL League One. It'll be by merit then. Cool. They're going to have to hit certain standards. They're going to have to be able to have venues that are appropriate. They're going to have those types of things. That's something that I think is important, and I think you're starting to see other countries recognize that as well. But that would be great because you're talking about a difference in level of, a few $1 million here and there. Okay. That's manageable. Going from a budget in the USL Championship, let's say $10 million, to a budget in Major League Soccer of bottom, let's say $35 million. It's not so manageable. And there's not a magic sponsorship tree when you get promoted that's sitting out there that you get to shake. So it's complicated. I think with MLS, when you get to 32, I think when you get past 30, honestly, you need to have a strategic planning discussion about, all right, we still have money on the table from teams that want to come in, expansion cities that want to come in. What do we want to do? Do we get to 40 and do an East-West? Do we get to 40 and do a ProRel amongst ourselves? Do we have 8 more, 10 more at that point that we can bring in? Do we then look to do a business relationship with the USL Championship? What do we do? Because I think once you get to 30, you have to have that discussion.
The other pro leagues, 30, 32, that's where they've capped it.
And that's U.S., yeah, and that's so different. That I think a lot of people have said, well, First Division soccer has to be 20. No, I don't think it does. Like, Argentina went to 30 because they didn't want to see your River Plates get relegated again, and they realized that didn't work in their format. But you don't have a country this size anywhere else with a league that is truly nationwide. Russia's not truly nationwide, if I am not mistaken. I think they might have some teams spread across the country, and they have to do some weird scheduling things to deal with that. But it's not like this. Not like MLS. I don't see a need in limiting MLS I don't think you have to, let me put it that way, limit it to 20. If MLS makes the decision from a business perspective and growing the game that it would be better served to have 2 leagues of 20 and have 40 teams overall in Major League Soccer, okay. I don't think it has to do that. But once you get past 32, it can get complicated if you're all in a single flight.
I was looking at the Russian Premier League. They just have 16 teams, and then, of course, you get into the Ukraine, and it's an entirely different setup for them, and so it goes by country.
16, but where are their 16 located? Because I thought they did have, at least in recent years, they might have had a team that was way out to the east.
So, yeah, Sochi is way out east.
Okay, so they have one now that's way out there.
Yeah, and 4 in Moscow itself.
Yeah, it's really hard for that to work on a regular. It's why it doesn't happen very often. Here, no. You've got 2 in L.A.
You're flying.
You've got a bunch. You're flying a lot. That's just the way this league's going to be. And I think it'd be silly to limit it unless from a league perspective, if you can get to 40, then it's better to split it into 2. Okay. But I don't think you should be capped at 20 or 24. I think where you're growing is good for the game as a whole. I think U.S. soccer is in a better place because of the growth of Major League Soccer. And anybody who argues that, I have to wonder about the agenda, because I remember the days before MLS, and I remember the days when MLS was tiny. And, man, they feel like so long ago now.
Yeah.
And everything felt so much smaller. You would not be talking about TV coverage in the way that we have in this hour. You would not be talking about radio coverage that we've talked about. You would not be talking about media coverage, because it didn't exist, because it was tiny. Now it's a different ballgame because of the growth of the league and the growth of the divisions underneath it. And those are very important too, because you can't be in every city. You can't be in every metropolitan area. That's where USL Championship and USL League One are really, really important. But the top flight and the top level and the big clubs do have a lot of value in driving the overall conversation.
One more thought on the Twitters about the future of MLS, and then we've got other thoughts from folks about having to do with formation and last night and things like that, having to do specifically with Atlanta United.
Cool.
John Nason, 32 teams, 4 divisions, home and away in the division, 1 game versus everyone else, 38-game season, 18 playoffs, shrugging emoji, #Thursday Thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it. I mean, I think there's enough formats out there that you can get into and discuss and pull apart. You know, the league's going to have to make some decisions on how many games it wants to play. They've definitely got to make some decisions on the calendar, because that's an issue, and you're going to have to navigate the international windows and all those types of things too. It's not easy, but it's doable. I mean, I'll take this format over what you have in Argentina any day of the week, where you have 24 teams and you're playing everybody once in a 23-game league format. Then you're doing a cup where you split it into 2, and you're basically doing like mini leagues. So then you play another 11 games. So you're playing 34 games, but you're doing it in 2 uneven competitions, and then you have some kind of knockout with the Copa de Superliga. Yeah, this is so much better than that. It's not even funny. I don't like the playoff format. It needs to be 2 legs, in my opinion. It needs to probably have fewer teams, or you have play-in games that are single leg like you've had in the past. I think overall it needs to be 2 legs, though. That would make it a better way to determine a champion, but those are smaller issues. I think the league is in a very healthy place, and it's continuing to grow, and that's going to be a good thing in the long run.
All right, you want to get into folks talking about stuff on the pitch and in Orlando from last night?
Sure, let's go ahead and do that. No breaks. Let's go ahead and do it.
All right, so no breaks.
No breaks.
Starting off with Nathan Pugh. Herc Gomez speaking on ESPN FC last night on PT's sub against LAFC, quote, but it was like he, meaning Frank DeBoer, was trying to break Atlanta's rhythm. It's really been Frank DeBoer's fault this season, end quote. It's like I'm an Arsenal or Man U fan. We've made it. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
Yes, we've made it. And yes, the manager was trying to break his own team's rhythm. No, yes. And this is the stuff that, I'm sorry, when you're paying attention to the day in and day out and you know that Ezequiel Barco has not played in a league match since May 8th, and he's only played one match since returning to Atlanta from the U20 World Cup, in an Open Cup match where he was kicked out of it and was injured and missed a lot of time, you would know that, like, also from quotes, that Frank DeBoer was planning on playing him 15 minutes against DC, but the way that match played out, he was unable to do it without putting the result at risk. In this one, the decision was made not to break up Atlanta's rhythm, because that doesn't make any sense. The decision was made to play Barco 30 minutes. And, I mean, Frank said this after the game. You can agree or disagree with the decision, but, like, he gave you why. He told you why. Barco getting those minutes was a priority. Now, could you have given him less minutes, put him in for Heinemann or Remedi or Nagbe at that point and really went for it? You could have. I would have leaned that way. I would have. I would have waited till about the 70-minute mark and then rolled the dice. I think 30 minutes of playing with two central midfielders against L.A., with that group on the field and where that game was, you would have been at a far greater risk of conceding the fifth goal than scoring the fourth. You were in a pretty good spot, and you brought in fresh legs in a spot that could have changed it. It didn't. It didn't hurt you. It didn't help you. You could have waited and really rolled the dice, and then if you give up the goal later, you give up the goal later, but it would have been less time for that risk. You were also, and this is something that I think has been brushed under the rug, you were also at the stage when this happened looking more likely of scoring the fourth goal than conceding another, or, you know, LA finding the play and getting another. So you didn't have to make a drastic change there, and you didn't. You made a like-for-like change, and part of the reason you did is you felt like Ezequiel Barco needed 30 minutes of play to be back in the mix. He looked pretty good last night. I hope he's 90 minutes fit this weekend, and you can play him. And if he is, that 30 minutes that he got in L.A. was a big part of it.
Chris Hutchison, after last night, I'm good with Barco starting and PT maybe coming on for the last 20 or 30 minutes. To be totally sarcastic, I'm waiting for PT to blame FDB for those 3 shots he put into the stands last night. Hashtag no more drama queen.
He had a bad night in front of goal. He had some good plays, but he had those bad plays that are going to get the headlines. It's a fact. Part of the game. It's what happens, and he's got to be better. I've said it for a long time now. I think Pity Martinez is an amazing talent. I think he's an amazing player. We haven't seen enough of it on a consistent basis, and it does need to change. It really does. I hope it can. And I hope you can find the right setup, and I think Barco being part of the team will help with that, because then that takes some of the load off, and it makes Pity a player who, in my opinion, slots into a little bit more comfortable role for him, where he's finishing situations rather than an instrumental part of the build-up, and it's a better spot for him. So I hope Barco's reemergence and finding the right shape with the two of them involved will help Pity find better footing.
Eric Schwartz. Last night has me wanting to go back to the 4-3-3 just to get PT and Barco on field at the same time. Put Parkhurst or Pogba at left back. Let's score a bunch of goals. ! Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
Everybody yelled about that too. So that's where you get into the fan reaction. I don't know what formation people want. I don't know anymore. I think you can get more attacking talent on the field in a 4-3-3. I do. And if that means in the short term Parkhurst at left back, that's the trade-off you make. Then the other trade-off, and something that have to figure out, because this was a huge talking point about the 3-5-2 when it came back in, was Julian Gressel as a right wing back. It's a role that really suits him. Probably better than anywhere else he's played in the team. But you're not going to have that in a 4-3-3. So is he going to give you that same element as a right winger? He can. I really do think he can. I think he has from time to time. But if you can get a shape where it's Joseph up top, it's Barco as the 10, it's Pitti on the left, which is a little different. I think he's been his best on the right, but if you move him to the left and you play Gressel on the right, that might be your way to find that balance. Now, then you're going to be asking Barco, like, yes, you're going to have to play a little deeper at times. You're going to have to come back at times. We're going to need that part out of you. You're going to want Pitti to be as free as possible on the left and cut in. The problem is you don't have a left back who can go up and take that space, because Parkhurst, you're going to have to be careful with him going forward a little bit. If you have Bello, it's a different conversation altogether, because Bello can freely take that space and get back. Those are your things you got to consider, but I do think you can put a stronger group on the field in a 4-3-3. I've thought that all season long.
Michael Hedge is thankful no one got injured in a meaningless match in the midst of schedule compression, 3 completions, and a heated playoff contest. Barco looked great. LGP matched up well versus Costa. PTD 2019 PT Things. Hashtag Stay Classy MCO. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
Yeah, Orlando's good times. No one got hurt. You played Joseph, 30 minutes? LGP and Pitti played 45. Barco played less than 30. Brad, it's fine, but he played 30. Take that and run with it. It's all good. Now get ready for a depleted LA Galaxy come into town, and I'm curious to see if they come in with a very defensive mindset, because they have struggled for goals outside of Mr. Ibrahimovic, and he will not be suited up for this one.
2/3 of the goals this season will not be playing. Is that correct?
Your next leading goal scorer has 3, and he's a center back.
Waffle House United FC, que loco que está? Daniel Price.
I would assume that there's a little more context to that.
Okay. Daniel Price.
Is there? I'm not asking.
It's going back and forth. Oh, I just thought that was just in discussing PT in general. That was what.
But that could be. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's crazy. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all I got. I don't know what the conversation was.
Okay. Oh, that goes back to the Swixter and things that are being talked about, whether or not we don't know if they're being artificially created or not.
Okay. Let me try to have people's thoughts come back to something coherent after that. There's an anonymous account that appears to be a joke or delusional or both. That is trying to lead, I guess, a fan revolt would be the way to put it.
Yeah, a walkout.
I'm sorry, it's comical because it's just absolutely ridiculous, and it looks ridiculous, and I think it's designed to look ridiculous. So there's been conversation around that, and I think some people see it as a troll job. Some people see it as a joke. I think some have seen it without any of that and have seen it as legitimate. I don't think it is. And, yeah. So I don't know where Pitti Martinez being loco fit into that conversation, but, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Daniel Price. Let's talk about PT's performance last night. Overall, it was more of the same. Lots of sky-high, over-the-bar balls. If he could rein it in and strike it at a better angle, those are all going in. When does he find it, though, and get that much-wanted consistency?
Well, Pitti Martinez isn't going to score 20 goals. I don't think he's that player. And those are the moments that he wasn't good in tonight. That's not something we've talked about at all this season. And this is something about Pitti Martinez that I want people to look at him for what he's actually doing and not perceptions. Like, we haven't talked too much about Pitti Martinez being bad in front of goal. Not in those moments. There's been a lot of talk about him taking long shots. This wasn't that. This was just bad finishing. These were opportunities that he's got to put on goal, and he didn't. We're also not talking about some of the things that he did well in the game last night. Big switches, hit a ball from one wing to the other just on a dime. Stuff like that is really good. Pitti has not been good enough. Pitty's not a guy who, again, is here to score 20 goals. He's not here to score more than Joseph Martinez. I think he's here to be a danger and make an impact in the final third, and he hasn't done it consistently enough. It's going to be with some goals. It's going to be with some assists. It's going to be with some just attacking play that leads to goals. If not directly with an assist, it's part of the buildup. Needs to be more consistent in that area. I think in the 4-3-3 he can do that. I really do. And I think with the support of a Barco and the crossing wide of a Gressel, that gives you a lot of threats, and it's going to be harder for teams to key in on Pitti and send a lot of numbers his way. It's going to create more opportunities. Need to see that. And I think also something we talked about with LAFC that I think they do a really good job, they have an attack that is structured around getting the most out of Carlos Vela. Vela is not the one who is leading the press on a regular basis. Vela is the one who drops off. Other people step into that role. Then you play Vela after you recover the ball. And it's just automatic. You immediately recover the ball, look for number 10. Could Atlanta thrive with something like that with Pitti? Yeah, I think they could, because I think they've looked better when they have pressed up high when they've lost possession. It's not a press in the way that the Red Bulls play. It's honestly, closer to what LAFC, I think, wants to do is to what Atlanta can take some cues from that. LAFC wants to have possession. They are a good possession team. But when they lose that possession, they become a good pressing team. And that's what Atlanta needs to be better at. That's something they haven't done well this season on a regular basis. When they have, I think they've looked their best. So in those moments, if Pitti presses and does well, that's great. It's a bonus. I think you're better off if you're able to find another way to do it and then play Pitti off of the recovery. Because that's what LAFC has done so well with Vela, and he's just in open space. It just maximizes his impact. So we'll see. I think for Atlanta, they've had to change the shape because of the injuries. They've had to change the shape because of availability, and it's been difficult, and that's why you kind of are where you are, where you're still working through some of these things. I hope that they can find some consistency, and they're going to have to, at outside back, to be able to have any luck with it. You're going to have to get some consistency on the outside to be able to get to that stage.
Percy Herrera about last night, and we were discussing in the first hour about the lack of appreciation for certain players on the pitch. Percy says, to be fair, if this was held anywhere else, there would absolutely be more appreciation for Wando and Ramondo.
I think so, yeah, I do. I really do think so. And that was a shame last night. I was really disappointed, especially with Ramondo, because, it's been announced. It's his last All-Star game, and I think the PA announcer should have said that on his substitution.
Yeah.
Yeah, making his final appearance in a Major League Soccer All-Star game, number 18, Nick Ramondo.
Yeah, retiring at the end of the year, 18 historical seasons or 20 historical seasons. Yeah, it's all in the presentation, I think.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah, Jorge B. is catching up on shows and has his futsal diamond formation laid out. As we were discussing. Legends. Yes, MLS Legends, if you could have your futsal Legends tourney as a part of the whole MLS weekend or celebration week or however they're going to schedule it. In goal, Brad Friedel.
Okay.
Defense.
Futsal goal would be a little small for him. That's one thing. I like smaller goalkeepers in futsal, so I'd go Ramondo.
Defense, Eddie Pope.
Pope's silky. Yeah, I think he's still got some game. Yep.
Midfielder, Claudio Reyna Tab Ramos.
Yeah, cool. Dig it.
And then Landon Donovan as your forward.
I like it. I'd have to have Dempsey in there somewhere. I'd probably have him in at the expense of either Reyna or Ramos, because I want Clint Dempsey pulling stupid, crazy moves and trying to nutmeg everybody and trying to make about 20 different gifts out of whatever shifts he has on the field. So I'd force him into the team one way or another. That'd be the only big change. And then just from a futsal perspective, I think smaller goalkeepers are a little more successful. Guys are a little bit better with their feet.
Tofka puts up the GIF from Dumb and Dumber where Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels are yelling and screaming at each other, and the gangster dude is trying to sit in the middle between them and not lose his mind.
Okay.
When Charlotte looks to be getting an MLS club, you've given your heart to Atlanta and you live in Columbia, South Carolina. And then he posted that GIF.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think some folks in Tennessee are going through that with Nashville, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
Chris Hutchison says that after last night, he's thinking the TV crew should just leave their crowd mics in the truck when Atlanta United play Orlando.
I think you might just need to leave them in the truck when you're in Orlando. I don't know. I've heard things in other games. Look, when Atlanta's involved, yes, it's a different thing. But Orlando fans are known for some language from time to time. It has happened.
And the parabolic mics, they were picking up a whole lot of stuff last night, and especially the one guy that says, "I hope you can hear me."
Yeah, that was
and
funny.
Continued to yell. That was good. That's
that
good presence of knowing where you were when it
Yes.
comes to being where the microphones are.
Well, I don't think he
Daniel Price.
he wasn't saying, "I hope you hear me at home." I think he was yelling specifically at Brad, "Hey, I hope you hear me." Yeah, I don't know.
I was giving him far too much credit for the television audience and making sure that he was getting his point taken across.
You know where mics are on the field because you've done this for a long time. I don't think your average fan knows that.
Then let's see. Daniel Price is looking at 4 separate divisions, player divisions twice and everyone else once. Would that be sustainable? When it comes
going back to our league structure.
Divisional breakups. Yes. And then he had a Thursday thought for next year's All-Stars. He says it might be silly. Hear him out. What if we had a goalie game? Only goalies playing the 10 up front and an all-star striker in both nets. Is that too crazy? I think not. Fun? For sure.
That could be interesting. I would do that in a small-sided format. So, like, you get 5 goalkeepers from each team or whatever, and they get to play on the field for 30 minutes. Yeah, you could have a field player step in goal. You're going to be a little worried about injuries and such, which managers might not be happy about this. But I'd be entertained to see a team of goalkeepers play against one another.
Because they've always said that, that they could do things, and they'd love to be out there in striker positions and things like that, and this would be their opportunity. Maybe you shorten the field size.
Well, yeah, you do small.
Turn it sideways, maybe.
You do small side.
Yeah. And then that way they have less space to injure themselves, unless, of course, you turn it into demolition derby, and then they do injure themselves.
Well, you're still having them do things they don't normally do, and then you'd have somebody else in goal who's doing something that they don't normally do. So you would have those issues, yes.
And I think we are officially caught up because Sean is having a conversation with Swixter and saying that Swixter could coach Atlanta United to at least a 500 record.
Okay. All right. We're going to leave it on that. So
we're caught up. We're caught up.
We've got lots of stuff coming up the next couple of days. Tomorrow we'll be back at 9 o'clock. Doug Robertson, Mike Conti will join us to get set for Atlanta and the LA Galaxy. Atlanta United 2 is in action tomorrow night in Kennesaw against Loudoun United. We will be on the call for that on ESPN+. If you can come out and join us at Fifth Third Bank Stadium, would love to see you guys there for that. Atlanta United 2, better in recent games. Definitely better, and you've seen some development, and we're seeing a goal-scoring run from our friend from Burundi, Kana Kamana, adding some elements to his game.
Man and his Jets.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun to watch his development. So we'll be talking about those 2 matches tomorrow. We'll get you set for the MLS weekend. We'll try to help John with his fantasy team, although we make no guarantees. We'll talk about Prize Picks. We'll get back into that. You can go sign up over at myprizepicks.com. You can download the Prize Picks app. Use the code SDH to get a quarter of your initial deposit matched up to $1,000. You'll also get a free 2-pick $25 play, free roll to get you started, and if you get half of it right, you get $10. So pretty sweet deal. go to myprizepicks.com, use the code SDH, and try to win some money. It's been good from time to time. If they keep Carlos Heel on a low number, that's always a good one to play.
Gustavo Bo.
Well, he's been on a high number. Carlos Heel has been on a low number, and you want to pick the over on that because you're picking over-unders. So all those things are coming up over the next couple of days. You'll hear from our friends with the Charleston Battery as well. Greenville Triumph as well, yes?
Yeah, we're talking to Jake Keegan this afternoon, and then obviously Chris Makoviak and Chris Ashley later this afternoon as well. And with what happened in Swope Park accident, the Charleston Swope Park match was postponed. And so we'll be catching up with Poppy and finding out what the vibe is, because I think this is now the third time that the Battery this season have had a match postponed for one reason or another, one of them involving Atlanta United 2, and that match is going to be made up next month, I believe. And I can actually say that considering it's August. I think it's a September makeup. So I think it's going to be Poppy and yours truly catching up on everything in the soccer world, including Charleston, when there's nothing going on in the USL Championship. So it might be a wide-ranging conversation for the Poppy Miller Project this week.
Joseph Martinez said about the Orlando fans last night, he said, very affectionate welcoming. They always remember us with great affection, and I as well. Of all the games we've played, I remember them. Good stuff.
Oh, it's amazing when you're fathering people, all the sound bites.
Yes, and he said about having 5 players in the All-Star game, he said, I'm really proud of my team and city. It just means that we're doing things good, and the love we have for the club is big. So whenever we're out in the streets, the people always receive us with love. So very cool. You're starting to get more comments like that. A lot of reports will be coming out from Orlando, so keep an eye on it as people start to head back to their MLS homes, and we get ready for a big weekend around the league. The Eastern Conference race is very tight. You've got teams jockeying for position out west. We'll get into all of that tomorrow on the show, 9 a.m. Thanks for listening. Mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho plata.